That's no dignified way to earn a living, but it's better than frightening your audience with outright lies, which is what you and those silly women next to you sit and do every morning. Let's think about what happens when this testing takes place. They're called cases, and suddenly the mass media tell us that there's a spike in cases. Well, what happens is our borders are closed on the strength of the utterly baseless fears these people peddle. Andrews locked his vassals up for 5 days again this week, forced them to cover up their faces as if he was some Ottoman emperor from the Middle Ages. And on the strength of these lies, people are held against their will in quarantine, families are kept from ill or dying relatives, businesses are extinguished because declarations of states of emergency give people like our police commissioner unregulated power to do this, only on the strength of these phony diagnostic tests. I'm going to try and bury these PCR tests today once and for all. Listen to this statement about PCR tests, and then I'll tell you who said it and when. Here it is. The extent to which a positive PCR test result correlates with the infective state of an individual is still being determined. No ambiguity there. Ladies and gentlemen, that was said in September of 2020. Yes, 6 months into our lockdown disruption. And who said it? The head of the Therapeutic Goods Administration. The very people who license our medicines and our testing procedures. Still being determined. Do you see what that means? These polymerase chain reactions were the gold standard last year, and still by the ABC or the Guardian or other government. Yet the head of the Therapeutic Goods Administration said that a positive test could not even inform you as to whether you were affected. Well, their accuracy or lack of it was determined by a very authoritative and then in November, the Supreme Court of Portugal put it beyond doubt from a legal perspective. I don't know whether you're familiar with the case. You'd have to search hard for it on your Google sites. The mass media have never told you anything about this, but it's a legal case. The Supreme Court of Portugal, sitting in Lisbon, found that these tests were wholly unreliable. Arrested because one of them had tested this PCR test. I've read the judgment. I've read it in translation. Its logic is impeccable. This is a sophisticated European Union court of civil law of the same calibre as our own Supreme Court here in South Australia, and that's saying something. The court ordered the immediate release of the tourists. The scientific evidence that was put to them left them with no alternative. The court said this: we are unable to determine that a positive test corresponds to infection by SARS-CoV-2. They said why in detail, and you don't have to be Julius Sumner Miller to understand them. If I can read it, why can't the police commissioner? Let's insist he reads it before he signs off on the Ladies and gentlemen, there are hundreds, if not thousands, doctors and lawyers and virologists and epidemiologists and ordinary citizens like me and you who would take any chance to publicly debate this and every aspect of this phony pandemic, but that chance is never given to us. Come out, wherever you are, you cowards. Because you're taking the risk. If you don't deal with our arguments, you're going to be dealing with our rebellion. Why is it? Let me ask you this. Why is it that Stevens and Marshall are never challenged by anyone who has any kind of power? not even by the broken down hacks of reporters who turn up for those parodies of a press conference. Not by anyone in this building behind me, not by the AMA or the Law Society, not by the people who run the hospitals or the health funds or public servants or any other members of the clerisy. Clerisy is my term for the secular clergy. Now that we don't have the religious clergy anymore, we don't have the religious clergy anymore, ladies and gentlemen, because they permitted themselves in their churches to be told how to worship and when to worship by the state, and they've abolished themselves. What I didn't realise when I spoke back in December, actually just before I come to that, let me remind you of this, ladies and gentlemen. Remembrance Day, of course, in this state is on the 11th of November. We have another Remembrance Day. It's the 19th of November. That's the day that 1 million people were locked in their homes in this state. That's when the Chief Medical Officer decided that we're at risk of a new strain of virus transmitted by pizza boxes or their contents. The new strain was a fiction, of course. No, there was no new margarita or hold the salami COVID-19. It was the incompetence of our Chief Medical Officer and our Health Department investigators that caused this trauma, the only mass imprisonment this state has ever experienced in the 185 years of its existence. I don't know what's hard to believe, that a virus-driven pizza born, or that this ridiculous woman still has her job and the capacity to perpetrate such chaos in a state of 1.7 million people. Her problem was, though, and this is my conspiracy hypothesis, not his theory, her problem was, I think, that she jumped the gun. We're all of us becoming familiar with this new reference to new strains of the coronavirus. Boris Johnson used it in the UK in December to close his country down over Christmas. The French followed shortly thereafter. I think the problem with our Chief Medical Officer was she jumped the gun. She got her riding instructions wrong. She went for the whip before her horse could get into the straight and it broke down. Be warned though, she won't make the same mistake with vaccines. She will keep her mouth shut until instructed to open it this time. But I've found my voice too. I've never met an anti-vaxxer before the first rally I came to last year. But now that I know that vaccinations are not the old Edward Jenner attenuated pathogens that I learned about in my social studies class at primary school, carefully honed and carefully made to protect people so as to not to cause them infection over a period of 200 years, now that I know that instead they are injections of confected genetic material with barely 12 months of research behind them, you can count me in now as a proud anti-vaxxer. I've taken too much of our time. I want to end with this. This has never been about a virus. It has always been about the stealing of the inheritance of our freedom. To paraphrase Benjamin Franklin, a country that gives up its freedom for a little imagined safety will end up neither safe nor free.